This video is the most important evidence that you're going to need when it comes to how the harassment happened. This is towards Susana. This is Laura Fuentes, Gabriel Fuentes, and Joey Fuentes. Very specifically, the person who's going to know the most is Gabriel Fuentes. To my understanding, Gabriel Fuentes, he was older than me, I'm going to say, by like 6 months, or the same age as me. So I think it's important because obviously we're in the public eye and all this situation. I talked about Susana, Gabriel, which is my mom's name is also named Chito, Gabriel, I think it's his name as well. I just don't know him as Chito, which is my mom's brother, Beto's brother. Uncle Beto, Albert Melendez, his brother Chito. I was told that he died and got killed by the cartels in Mexico. So this is what I want to say about this particular type of situation, this particular discussion that's going to be the most evidence you're going to have regarding the harassment that came from the gay community and how they persecuted my mother right after my dad's suicide and before. I talked about that Gabriel, this is primarily for him as well for me to tell you this. The professionals can ask him, they can tell you this. I talked about that Susana was my assistant teacher in 7th grade, yada yada. I talked about all these other stories. Classroom, she got fired. She came to my classroom, took me out of class, and said, "They just fired me." And she said this, they fired her. And she said that they, dismissed her, and she was like crying. He's like, "What did you tell?" I said, "You don't understand, I'm being threatened by these people that if I don't say anything, I'm going to get in trouble." So that's what I have to say about that. So this is what I have to say about that. So it's so important for you to look this information up because you're going to find it in the evidence of what they did to my mother, and including because of the rapes that continued. They wanted to, and how Sarah and Ken played the participants and persecuted my mother, and nobody ever knew about it. You have no idea how dreadful this was for my mother. Because she's being sold for sex, being raped repeatedly. We put any baby, we take your house, hundreds, whoever took the house, whoever took the money, it's gone forever. Rapes, they didn't want to keep quiet, don't worry, we're going to coast this through until we get away with it. That's what they did. It's too late. So when I want to talk about Susana, is how they attacked her. Gabriel, from my understanding, I talked to my Uncle Beto. My Uncle Beto told me that Susana's now in a hospital and she's sick now. She's in a nursing home. Something had happened to her. She got malita or something. Now, I want to say this because when Gabriel, he's going to be able to tell you this. This is how I know about this. I was really good friends. I was good friends with Gabriel. We were good buddies. We were very good buddies when we were in school. And he was very smart. Held his ground. Very smart. And he looks Mayan, kind of Incas from the prehistoric days. He very dark hair like me, but very dark skin. Like he was like he was from deep in the heart of Mexico, deep in Mexico. People were. But he was a big kid, played football, and he excelled in football. He was a pretty stocky Mexican guy, like Edward. Looked like Edward, kind of skin tone hair, but obviously looked different. We go to his house. This is after, was I in 8th grade? Yeah, I was in 8th grade, I think. I was in 8th grade. Gabriel can tell you this. He was in 9th grade because he was a year and he was in R.L. Turner. My mom came. Susana got another job somewhere else. I don't know where it was. I think it was to be another school teacher or assistant, something in that. I don't know where it was. She had already gotten fired from her school. She had already gotten fired. This is after that. So we went, and I was kind of nervous when we went there. When we went to her house, and we're in 8th grade. I was in 8th grade sometime, early 8th grade, mid 8th grade. I can't remember exactly the time frame. It was in 8th grade though, because I remember he had entered. Gabriel Fuentes had entered high school at R.L. Turner. We go to her house, and for some reason we go to the house, and Julian was there. Just me and Julian and my mom. And it was like October, we get to the house, and they're the ones that actually gave the birds, eventually gave the birds to us, the cockatoo birds. We used to have two cockatoo birds, a bleached blonde hair cockatoo bird, and we had a gray one. You know, they have real cute, blush pink cheeks and a mohawk. We used to have those birds. They're the ones that gave one of us to my mother. One of the birds. Or my mother gave them the birds. I can't remember. It was one or the other. Anyway, they used to live over by Josie Lane, across from Snipcuts in Carrollton, Texas. They literally live a quarter of a mile to half a mile, about half a mile from Arlo Turner on Josie Lane, over at the intersection of Valley View and Josie Lane. I think it's Valley View? Valwood. It's on Valwood and Josie Lane, on the corner of that. There's a Kroger there. There's a gas station, Valerio or something like that. There's a church, Mary Immaculate Church is just down the street. There's a church. It used to be called Crockett Apartments, or this is some ghetto ass apartments there. But anyway, you go up the street, they live right there. They live down the street from what is the name of the middle school? Vivian Field Middle School. Vivian Field Middle School. And anyway, we went to their house. We go in there. It's night. It was like an important discussion, and Susana is not happy. She's like this, and she's looking at my mother like, "Are you stupid? Like, are you stupid? Like, you fucking bitch!" Like, and she was just like, she seemed to be like in an attitude. She wasn't yelling at my mother. You got to keep in mind, we went to Thanksgiving. They went to our house several times. They used to pick them up. There was good communication. After or before she got fired, they were putting so much pressure towards Susana because my dad had just committed suicide. And they were putting investigations on me. And they got the answers out of me by force. This is a teacher, Miss Spink, and they relied. And this is when my mom got threatened. I was in 7th grade by this time. And I got to 8th grade, and this is when they fired her. And I think it's important because when the 7th grade is when my dad had just committed suicide. I was in 6th grade, 12 years old. January happens. I turned 13. Early in the year, I'm in 7th grade. I'm recovering from my dad's suicide. I'm trying to recover, going throughout my life through grade school, trying to make something of my life. All these things are going on. They persecute my mother. This is when I talk about Ken and Sarah Cooper. They threatened my mother, and they told Frankie to go after my mother in the hospital after my dad committed suicide. And there's a black woman. God bless this black woman. She was an angel. She was a warrior. She was the one that was sitting at the desk, and she saw him on camera. And she goes, "Yeah, I'll watch you coming upstairs. Yeah, come on up. I see you that you're coming." And she saw Ken and Sarah, and they were showing up, and she got up and left the work area because my dad had just committed suicide. He had all this money, and my mom was sitting at the window, petrified eyes. And Sarah and Ken were not Sarah was like, "Fucking bitch. She stayed, you fucking filthy bitch. Look at you, filthy, disgusting." And she was very like that. And she'd always look at my mother like, "Stupid. You stupid." Like, and my mother, entire lifetime. So anyway, I drew the pictures. They gave the secret signals that told Frank to go after your mother. And this is when my mother had to she had put her batteries on, like she always used to talk about, and left. We left the house, we're walking in the parking lot, and Frankie was just kind of witted a little bit, like, "I'm just doing what I need to do. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of being like a sergeant here. I'm trying to." But he's so young, he doesn't have any understanding what and Frankie's sort of brainwashed by what Ken and Sarah had ordered him to do, because that's what they did. So I think it's important. This is what I'm going to get to the discussion of what had happened with this. When we went to Susana's house, keeps going for like, remember the little girl, my sister who passed away? This is all within that time frame. This little girl dies. My sister, Marissa Morena, I don't know her name, Down syndrome. I don't even know if my sister dies. Not a proper burial. watching her get it, whatever. So we're going to her house, and she just like, and she doesn't say, but I see her like mumbling, like she's saying something, and I hear her say something like, "You fucking bitch," and she's mad at my mother because she thinks that my mother has something, or sending people and causing so much trouble that it's getting Susana to get fired and losing her jobs. She had just gotten fired and lost her job. Susana and Gabriel could tell you this. Now, this is what I want to talk about Gabriel. This is what I want to talk about when we walked in the house. I'm good friends with Gabriel. I knew the kids that were in their house. They used to have, Chito wasn't there at the time, I don't think. And yeah, he wasn't there at the time that we went there, because we only went to the house like 2-3 times. We get to the house. My Uncle Chito used to have 2 Doberman pinchers. He could have had one albino, but he had at least one Doberman pinscher that was a giant one. Not the little small miniature ones. I'm talking about like the big Doberman pinchers, like giant. They're like huge. He had 2 of those, or 1 of those in the backyard. And anyway, we walk in there, and Gabriel had been told by Susana, be careful. Don't trust these. Don't trust her. Be on the lookout. Something's real bad happening. Because Susana used to go to Gabriel as like the protector, the same way as she went. My mother went toward Frankie or me. But she doesn't know. Susana doesn't know. Gabriel, if you're watching this, your mother doesn't know that my mother doesn't have anything to do with this. This all has to do with keeping your mother's mouth shut, because she is heterosexual, and it's them that's doing this, and a lot of bad shit is happening because it's linking itself. Anybody that tries to help my mother, because they found out that my mother was trying to ask for help, and she was helping my mother with the paperwork, overtaking my dad's money, his house, and she didn't want to play a part of it very much. She showed up for 1 or 2. She's told my mother, I don't want to be any part of that. This is really bad. I talked about the stories of this, but I want to say this. You can ask Gabriel about this if it's true. I walk in, and we're in the house, and Gabriel walks by and go, hey, Gabriel. He didn't say anything. He goes, hey, and he's walking like this, just kind of like, and he's wearing these boots, these real heavy industrial boots. And he's just quiet, like something bad is happening. You know how like when you tell the older teenager kids or mid-teenager kids that something really bad has happened and they're just on the lookout? That's exactly how he's behaving. And he didn't really want to say anything. I said, he didn't say anything. And it was very weird of that. And he was pretty passive about it, but he didn't even want to like make eye contact. He was just kind of like keeping things suspicious. We got to keep things regulated, like see what's going on. So I think it's important for me to say this. I don't blame him. He didn't have an attitude toward me. He didn't want to react because he knew that we showed up with my mom there. And Susana was trying to ask my mom questions to figure out why she was getting fired from her job and who's harassing her at her job sites and threatening her, because she was going through hell at her job sites. This is why I talk about that they cornered, this is what I want to make this video on. This is why they cornered my mother. That if you go ask for help from anyone, no, we're in control of the gay community. Sarah's going to get the investigation, Ken is, and that family, and whoever else is, but we're going to make sure that anyone that's in that family that goes against what we want for your mother is going to be cut off. And that's how they did it. Your mom, Susana, had nothing to do with it. She didn't have any wrong that she did. They went after her. And then that's when she has to protect her own life, and they really didn't want to communicate very much anymore. So I think it's important that I say this for my mom's sake, because once that little girl died, Susana didn't do anything wrong. She did call my mother a bitch, and this is what I talk about. Not loud, but whispered it, and my mother kind of got in shock a little bit, and I talked about that. You asked Julian this. We walked to the outside into the car, and I asked Julian, while we're walking, I asked my mom, we're with Julian to the car, we're by ourselves at night, 8 o'clock, and it's getting pretty cold. It's like 55 degrees, 60 degrees, and we're walking to the car, parked at there's a bunch of cars in the driveway, and then we're at the very end of the driveway. We're walking, and I said, hey Mom, guess ¿Qué te dijo que un bench or bitch or bench? And my mother's behaving like she got insulted. She didn't feel comfortable over there, no. And she knows that this is a bad place for us to go. Ask Julian this. Julian keeps asking me, "What's bench? What's bitch? What's bench? What's bitch?" That's what he keeps saying. He keeps saying in the car. You can ask him. Hopefully he can remember. We get in the car and we leave. That was it. So I want to say this because you got to understand that they were doing this. Susana, she was very helping, but she starts having to do things like everyone else because of what they're doing in teams, because of what they did to Frankie, the celebrities, or specifically the incident, and my dad's suicide. Very importantly, also because my biological father's daughter, who never he knew he had, Michaela, this is your sister, who passed away. If you care, want to know anything else, is that little girl is on the verge of dying. This is all within that time frame. This is all very close to that time frame. This little girl dies, my dad commits suicide, and there's just all this paperwork, the lawyers that are taking advantage of my mother. My aunt Lupe and Joni are taking extremely advantage of my mother. The time is all lost. They bought my mother a mansion. Whatever house other people you bought from, and I don't know what, maybe they're scared of being in the public eye. I don't know what those situations are. Her daughters, I don't know how, whoever did, whoever stole everything. But I think it's important for me to say this just on behalf of Gabriel and Susana, that I wanted to say that the reason Gabriel, this is to let you know that Gabriel, you have no idea, your mother would probably tell you this, where they were after us, and they went after your mother because I had seen this, and that's why. That had nothing to do with me. It was because your mother wanted to try to help my mother and was kind, and that was why. Because anybody that was kind enough to educate and help my mother and do what was right was going to go after my mother's assistant to make sure they can imprison my mother and put her down like a worthless dumb hog, like they could have, in any way they could take advantage of. You can ask Gable for this. I think it's Gable Fuentes. I saw some pictures online. He's really smart. He knew Ivan. He went to school with Ivan. They were in the same grade. As Ivan. So, I talked about Joey and the little girl, Laura, and Gable used to come to our house all the time. Every time, they tell you this, we used to watch comic book, the X-Men cartoon show. It was like religiously. We watched every time came to our house for like 4 months. They showed up to our house. His mom would pick us up. Susana would pick up her kids after. We got to stay there like an hour or 40 minutes. We'd show up to the house. We'd watch cartoons. Always had to watch the X-Men, Wolverine, Gambit, all that great stuff. Joey, Gabriel, me, we'd always watch it, and then we ended up playing football on Genesis, and this is where we used to play video games. We used to always play Mutant League football. You can ask him this, and we used to play 2 football games. It's Mutant League football and Madden NFL. We used to play those 2 games repeatedly after. We always watched our cartoons of X-Men, the old school one with Magneto, the old X-Men 90s cartoon show, and then we'd play football for like 20 minutes, and then his mom would by that time showed us and picked us up. But I want to say this, that you can verify this, because I spent the night at Susana's Chito's house, spending the night because I was really good friends with Gabriel and Joey, and we showed up there. We showed up at Gabriel's house. We were playing video games because I used to stay there when I was a kid as well. I spent the night a couple of times. We spent hours, and we used to play video games, and used to play Madden NFL and Mutant League football on Genesis. So you can also ask them about those 2 games. They'll remember pretty well. So hopefully that refreshes their memory. But I wanted to say that anything that happened to your mother and the firing and the harassment to jobs, you have to understand it had nothing to do with your mother or your family doing anything wrong. it was the wrong that they knew that they were helping my mother, and they went after your mother to cut off ties, and that was why. Because it was the assistants, and what they put a ton of pressure on your mom. I was in class and I saw what they were doing. So I think it's important. There's probably, if Susana's perfectly fine, she'd be able to tell you. She'd be able to tell you like how bad it was, because it was bad. It was a harassment. Drama was bad at the job site, and you don't understand what these people are doing, because they want to take over the money, they want to take over the house, and then claim this dead little girl. My biological father at this time was also being talked about by Miss Smink. This is when I talk about that. Yeah, no, you're going to prison, and I saying awful shit. They were premeditating this, because whoever it was that it happened, you got to understand, you have 2 fatalities of suicide, and no one's doing anything about it. My mothers look like scum. Whoever shows up with all their money, whoever shows up with everything, took everything away from me, threw me to the streets, nearly digging in trash cans for food. I hardly had anything. But I wanted to say that I had a family with Frankie and Julian at some point in my life. And my life mattered to some extent. Whoever it was with their money that showed up did this to intentionally harm me and Frankie to get away with what they did. They could buy my mother off and pay the kids off and buy everything off with their money, and they did. But it's too late now. Do the best that you can. Psychologist, I hope this relieves to whatever best situation. Do whatever you want. They bought the time and they did all the destruction. They got away. Their money could buy everything, and it did. And they got away in Pleasant. Why I was getting 40 tickets in my 20s, and nobody cared. They were just wanting to keep quiet because they wanted to make sure their money could buy anything and get away with what they did and make their heroes into heroes, and that's not what happened. So, God bless, and hope y'all can heal, fix whatever you can. Forgiveness is a powerful remedy. That on my deathbed, Robert Palomo used to tell me this, and he told me this several times, very serious. He said, forgiveness is something you give to yourself. Very helpful advice Robert Palomo used to always give me. He lives out in New York, does royal weddings, but God bless, and I hope the best.